One of the things I've been meaning to do is getting some time to show a few little helpful hints. We have a lot of people that are getting horses for the first time now, and some things over time get lost that can help make things easier for us and easier for our horses. So this morning I'm going to take a little bit of time to show you a few helpful things. One of them is I have taken with a saddle blanket to help my students, and some of my students have some very, very tall horses. So they can't see over the back to know that their blanket is centered. So one of the things I've helped them and shown them to do is to take and tie a piece of string, of colored string, front and back in the center of your blanket. So then you know when you put your blanket on the horse, you can be sure that it is centered on the back and not have it longer on one side, shorter on the other. Keeps you from having to travel around the horse and double checking. And then when you put your saddle on, and if you're kind of knock your blanket askew a little bit, you can you'll know right away by the strings and correct it quickly before you snug your saddle down. The other thing related to a blanket is when we put our saddle on. Yep, good boy, Floyd. Is before we start dropping our rigging and cinching up, and you may have to do this several times or a couple times, is to take the center of your blanket or your pad and pull it up into your gullet. And then make sure you have that freedom over the wither as you snug your saddle down. So you may have to re-pull a couple of times to make sure you don't have blanket pressure putting pressure on the wither, because that's just skin really stretched over the bone. It's just, there's not a lot of meat layer there over the top of the wither. So it makes it much more comfortable for your horse. Your horse doesn't feel the restriction of the downward pressure of a blanket. And if you have a cut back pad, something like that, it's not something that you have to worry about. But if you're using a blanket or pad that's full all the way through, pulling it up in there, and I just kind of lift my saddle a little and pull up and try to create that crease in there. Some other things that I do, I'm going to drop my rigging that I'd like to share with you. Is the use of cinch safes on girths. People a lot of times don't realize that we always used to use them, and they've kind of started disappearing some. A cinch safe is something that protects against the horse of feeling the metal pull in on the horse and create tension. It makes it much more comfortable. The other thing it does is it wicks away sweat, keeps the horse a lot more comfortable. I tend to like sheepskin back ones. I'm a real advocate of natural fiber on natural fiber with a horse. So the wool backed ones work really well. There's one on the other side as well. The other thing that's really nice about these is in the spring, when your horses have their winter hair and they're starting to shed hair, it is very common to see that long hair get wrapped around the metal ring on your girth. And then when you snug up or you get on and you don't realize it, it does a pull on your horse and your horse can react. So it's definitely an insurance policy and safety as well. If you notice, which is normal for me, those of you that know me know that I put my saddles pretty forward so I can get as close to the base of the wither as possible, to the strongest part of the horse's back. So you're seeing me do that again. The other thing is these saddles that I use have a lot of flare in the front of the bar, so it flares over the shoulder. It never impinges on the shoulder. The other thing I'd like you to notice about this saddle is this is a square skirted saddle. The only thing that's different is the corners have been rounded just for the aesthetics, for a different kind of line in the look and the manufacturing. It's what I wanted. This is a gaited horse, and this is a Rocky. This is Pretty Boy Floyd, and he has a very short back. And I hear all the time that you need a small round skirt on a gaited horse. because of their short saddlebacks. That's not true. What's happening most of the time is people aren't getting their saddles put up far enough, either because they don't fit, they don't have enough flare, or because the last 20 years you've been told to move your saddles back, okay? So square skirted saddle really does not impact whether it's on a gaited horse or not. Get your saddle up where it needs to be and it will function just fine. And then my back rigging. I always make it equally snug. I tend to snug a saddle down several times before I ever get on a horse. Okay, those were a couple things. Something else I'd like to share is when you are, a lot of people don't realize that your stirrup leather, and these are nylon, actually travel around the saddle bar, the tree bar of the saddle. And so if they lengthen and shorten their stirrups, especially people that tend to shorten their stirrups, they get this bulk under here. And we get a lot of calls saying, you know, the saddle isn't comfortable, the metal is digging into my horse, and it's because when they shortened or lengthened, or usually shortened their stirrup, they didn't know that you take and you slide your stirrup leather up and down, and that removes the bulk. You don't have that metal getting up against the horse or that twist in there. So just grab your underneath, pull up, and it will lengthen it all out for you. And then put your hobble strap on, okay? Back to my length. Something else that is very handy to know, on an all-leather saddle, good boy Floyd, on an all-leather saddle we set the stirrups. They're wet, they're twisted back, they're let dry, so you don't have the pressure. It relieves pressure on your knees, your hip sockets, your ankles, is because it creates a roll in the stirrup fender. On a Cordura, we don't have that ability because it's made out of Cordura, it's not leather. So one of the little tricks that I found, because anytime it also makes a turned stirrup, makes it when you mount on top of your horse, you're not having to reach down and put the stirrup on your foot, which can be a very dangerous position to be in, especially if you're working with a colt. So one of the things I do, as you can see the Blevin buckle is very flat here. What I do is I take my Blevin buckle and put it on the back side. I actually reverse it, and it creates a turn. So it's like having a set stirrup. It's just like having a set stirrup. So now when I get on the horse, automatically I don't have to reach down and pull the stirrup onto my foot. I'm safe. My foot will automatically go into the stirrup, and I'm already in a proper position. I'll show you that again. This would be normal. I do. And reverse it to the back side. And now I have my turn. If you tend to feel any bulk under here, that means that your leg is setting too far forward. It is often I hear people say they don't like to use the back rigging or a pack cincher, something like that, because their horse can't feel them. Actually, if your horse can feel a simple vibration in a rein like that, it's going to feel you through this very, very thin layer of leather. So even think of the thickness of a seat. You know, when you're using and turning your seat bones, your horse can hear you through this, and this is much thicker than this is, okay? So it probably means if your horse can't hear you, your horse needs to get a little more responsive in the sides. It's just gotten a little numb in the sides in the way that you apply your leg aids to a horse and communicate to them with that. Another thing that is very, very helpful is often when we put them on the ground, like I picked this one up off the ground, it was sitting on its horn, or if you're putting them on racks and horse trailers, the vibration of a horse trailer is what happens often is where the stirrup leather goes around the tree bar, it can travel forward. And if you can see, there's a stop here along this tree bar. And see, this stirrup leather has traveled forward on that tree bar. That means when I get into this saddle, my whole leg assembly is going to be too far forward. I'm not going to be automatically in a centered level pelvis. It'll put me into a chair seat position. So one of the things I do, Floyd, I know you think he's here for your entertainment, is I take, before I get on, I always pull my stirrup leathers back so they get closer to that stop. That way I have my hip and my heel alignment. I'm already in a level pelvis. When I get on the horse, my legs are already in position, so I'm safe. So these are just a couple of tips, a few things that might help you out, make things easier, make things safer for you when you're riding your horse, and I just wanted to share them.